Keir, if there's one thing that I've learned over the course of this season, it's that Steven Soderbergh loves making movies.
Seeing that we've dedicated nearly 50 episodes to the man, I think it's safe to say that is true.
Big movies, small movies, thrillers, comedies, heist flicks, sport flicks, you name it, he has done it.
Which brings us to his latest release, Black Bag, a spy thriller that superficially covers similar ground to what Soderbergh already covered in his 2011 film Haywire. That's the one starring former MMA star Gina Carano. Both Haywire and Black Bag are spy thrillers, and they both star Michael Fassbender, but their similarities more or less end there.
Yeah, and if I'm recalling correctly, I think we both enjoyed Haywire. You liked it, right?
I liked it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, I did. I liked it a lot. We both enjoyed Haywire, but we're not here to talk about Haywire. We have an episode dedicated to Haywire that you can go back and find in our archives. We are here today, though, to talk about Black Bag. It releases at the time it's recording tomorrow, which is March 14th. It stars, as Keir mentioned, Michael Fassbender, Cate Blanchett, Naomi Harris, Tom Burke, Marissa Abella, and I'm going to say his name wrong, Roger Jean Page. It's somewhere in there. He's
Sounds
good looking.
Good to me.
Yeah, he's good looking. He'll get over it. He's a very handsome man. So if we butcher his name on a podcast, just the burden he has to carry. And it's also written by frequent Soderbergh collaborator David Koepp. That all said, Keir, let's roll right into it. What did you think of Soderbergh's latest?
Oh, man, I loved it. As I was walking out of the theater, I quickly opened my notes app and tried to, put down a few thoughts so I'd have something intelligent to say when we sat down to talk about it during our recording. And honestly, I feel like I had a lot less to say about this than most Soderbergh films, but I was just kind of awash in a feeling of pleasure. I feel like this is top tier Soderbergh, one of the best Soderbergh-Koepp collaborations, and that's saying something. Mm-hmm. To me, it just satisfied on almost every level, and it was a delightful film-going experience. I mean, we'll get into the details in a minute, but what about you, Mike?
No, likewise. I absolutely adored it. It's funny because we covered just recently Presence, both in a regular episode where we went deep into it and in a Go to the Movies episode where we just gave our general thoughts, and we both really, really enjoyed Presence. I think our enjoyment of Presence has gone up since we've seen it more and more. It's available on VOD now. And at that time, I was like, wow, what a year. He started off in January, he being Soderbergh with Presence. And it's a movie that we thought was more or less a home run, at least for nothing else for the formal experimentation, but it was also just a damn good movie. And then here he comes 2 months later with a movie that I would say is somehow actually better. I like, I don't want to compare it. It's not a big deal, but I'm like, it feels, it's such a absolute home run, Black Bag. And I adored it. I loved it. I can't wait to see it again. It's fun. It flies. It's tight as a drum. You mentioned David Koepp. David Koepp is like, I guess they must have signed some sort of oth that Koepp's like, I won't write over 90 pages, Steven. That's it. I write 90. Where it ends, it ends. So conventional wisdom, for those who don't know, usually filming a script is like a minute a page, more or less, is how the math works. So Kimmy is like 88 minutes, Presence is like 86, this is like 89, something like that. So Koepp is 90 and out.
Koepp likes short films and he cannot lie. Cubs and the White Sox are both, spring training. And so to continue the tortured baseball metaphors here, I would say Presence is a triple and Black Bag is a home run for me. Both excellent movies. They are different movies, so comparing them may be kind of silly, but I can't wait to show Black Bag to my wife. I texted her right after and said, oh my gosh, you're going to really love this. I can't wait to see it again. Like we are constantly saying about Soderbergh films, it's a movie for adults. And for some reason, when we say that, I always feel like I hear Siskel and Ebert in my head or something like that. But it's just like, Roger, this is a movie for adults. Yes, I agree, Gene. It is, though. And it just delivers like intellectual fun. It's funny. It's got just enough kind of spycraft, and they even throw in an explosion for the trailer, so people who don't want too much of a cerebral spy thriller will be lured into the theater, although I'm afraid those people will be disappointed. Only one explosion, not a lot of shooting in this movie. I will avoid other spoilers. This is a a movie that is an actor's feast. The heart of it centers around this relationship between husband and wife. Michael Fassbender plays George Woodhouse. Kate Blanchett plays his wife, Catherine St. Jean. There is something so refreshing about a movie that's ultimately about monogamy. The thing that kicks the whole movie off, and again, we'll avoid spoilers, but this is very early on in the film, is when Woodhouse is basically told by a superior, we've got a mole. One of the moles might be your wife. You've got to investigate them. If it's your wife, can you handle it? He says, yes, I can. We're off to the races. We are told constantly by all the other characters that like everybody else in this world is unfaithful to their partner, sleeping around because they're all liars. They're all spies. Like nobody tells the truth, but they all believe that Woodhouse and St. Jean are like this model marriage. How do they do it? How do they survive? In this world of duplicity, how has their marriage stood up to be so strong? But then, right at the beginning of the movie, like we're asked to wonder: is it as strong as we think? Is it as strong as Woodhouse thinks? And from there, it goes all sorts of very interesting places. And honestly, I mean, we've seen spy movies about husband and wife teams before, particularly some pretty cheesy ones.
Mm-hmm.
This is a grown-up one. This one would have been right at home in the 40s or 50s with a classic film director. I'm kind of rambling here, but it's grown-up entertainment. It satisfied me on every level, and they didn't have to have a lot of car chases or any car chases in order to deliver that.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a good point about adult entertainment, grown-up entertainment, and I feel like that gets a bad rap in a way, and it's a little bit frustrating. And I think it's frustrating from the creative side as well, because I feel like there's a stigma that like adult entertainment it has to be from a country you never heard of, and it had to have been made for $200, and like you have to like basically just eat your veggies, and then everything else is just popcorn shit. Like, like it's either like the art house select, that like, is going to most likely, I'll be frank, bore you to tears, or it's got to be like a tent pole and there's nothing in between. And that's nonsense. And that's not how cinema's been since its inception. This type of movie is actually the backbone of cinema for, a century. It's just a really good script, really good stars, in and out in your 90 minutes. It's smart, it's breezy, it's fun, it's well done, well executed. It's shot in this great, anamorphic lens. It looks great. We've said this, the magical, it plays great thing. It does all of those things so well. So I wish that there was a lesson to be learned that Soderbergh seems to be teaching us over and over. When he did it with like Kimmy is a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
just a fun, breezy thing. Yes, it's for adults. I mean, I don't think my kids would, not enjoy Kimmy. I think they might, like teenage, kids. I really want this movie to do well. I want this movie to do tremendously well at the box office. I hope it has the potential, and I want to push that as hard as I can because I want movies like this to exist, and I think this is very deserving. And the other thing that I'll say, about this, that's so great, and this isn't a spoiler, I don't think, but this is basically just, and we talked about this yesterday, it's a Poirot novel. It's an Agatha Christie story, just with spies. That's it. You mentioned we're off to the races. Okay, we've got a spy, and what does he do? He invites them all to dinner. This dinner scene is, I don't want to give too much away, is absolutely terrific. The dialogue is spectacular, but it's the setup of Agatha Christie. You round up the suspects. You bring them all together. They do it again at the end. It's like we're rounding up the suspects, and that's it. And Fassbender and Blanchett, to a degree, because they're both such masters at this, are detectives in their own way. But it's mainly centered on Fassbender, who is like the Poirot, more or less. And it's absolutely fun. Like my point is, if you loved Knives Out, which was a huge success, those movies, there is no reason you wouldn't love Black Bag. You will absolutely love Black Bag if you like Knives Out.
Yeah, I thought the same thing about that. Let's talk about the dinner scene for a moment. We were talking about a dinner scene just recently with Presents, where I was a little irked because I felt like Soderbergh kind of cheated in the way he framed this dinner scene. But here he said, and other people have said, that like a dinner scene is one of the hardest things to shoot. He came back again in a movie that is released 2 months later, does another dinner scene with 2 additional people at the table, 6 people at the table, and it's a set piece. It's absolutely successful. It's riveting, and it's interesting because Koepp is, to my knowledge, not a playwright, but this feels like a script that could have been written by a playwright because the dialogue is that interesting, and honestly, because it feels like something that could work on the stage because you don't need all these crazy locations. There are enough interesting locations in the film, and the sets are amazing, or the practical locations, the combination of the two. I thought the house of our main 2 characters is really awesome to look at.
Yes.
The spy HQ, probably a lot glossier than any real spy HQ, but again, really cool. Like there's just enough interesting locations and settings to almost to distract us from the fact that it's not the typical, Jason Bourne kind of thing where we're racing through all sorts of, like checking off famous locations in European cities. It's very much set in London and environs, but we don't feel like we're stuck in a room ever.
No, and it's also like, going off of that, like just like a classic movie, like everyone looks great. Like whoever the costume designer was should get at least, I'm not kidding, like maybe an Oscar nomination for this, because it is beautiful people who look fantastic, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. Like you said, the house is cool. Their office, the spy office, is awesome. There's that moment where Pierce Brosnan's giving this evil eye to Michael Fassbender when he interrupts his meeting, then shuts the curtains like with a push of a button. It's just such a cool little feature that they throw in there. But more to the point, and I want to say one thing about the dinner scene really quickly in a moment, but like more to the point, like you're saying, everybody just looks great. Like Cate Blanchett is gorgeous in this movie. Michael Fassbender, like a career of great eyeglass choices that he makes. Like he always has interesting glasses on. Like he looks awesome. Like it's just a cast of really good people, well dressed, that you could look at for 90 minutes, and you're like, this is pleasant. And the dinner scene, I'll say really quick, you're right. It is like a playwright wrote that. But then you realize also, just by itself, in and of itself, you're like, wow, what just crisp, sharp as a tack dialogue. But then you realize everything that happens plays out through the movie and circles back around. I mean, it is genius, that script. Then that's that dinner scene and how it pays off eventually. Like I said, just by itself, you're like, wow, what great dialogue and entertaining dialogue. And then it pays off, and you're like, well, this is tremendous. A tremendous script from Koepp.
One of the reasons I want to watch it again is just to confirm my notion that everything pays off and the plot is airtight, because that was certainly my feeling walking out of the theater. I didn't catch any discrepancies whatsoever. And one of my little quibbles with Presence was that as we discussed at length, particularly in our second episode on Presence, where we talked about the ending, I did feel like there was some question about the ending and some question about the kind of world building that led me and at least one other viewer that we know to be a little bit puzzled about some of it. I didn't get that feeling at all with Black Bag. I suspect that when I watch it again, I will just admire it even more, because I think all the dots are connected impeccably. It just feels so satisfying when it comes full circle. I've got to read this. We're kind of going all over the place, but I got to read this quote. As I was walking out behind a film goer who did not share my high opinion of the movie, and I couldn't believe it. It's just, I guess, a great illustration of how people can respond to art differently. But this woman said, and I wrote this down, so it's almost a direct quote. She said, "I thought the movie was fine. I mean, it didn't really go anywhere. I thought they all dressed great, so it made me realize I really need to get my shit together." I was like, so the one thing she took away was everybody looks great, but she thought it didn't really go anywhere. I was like, well, it comes full circle, but it goes a lot of places in between, and it resolves beautifully. I was like, you have no appreciation of great drama.
Yeah. Also, why don't you go watch My Dinner with Andre, which is a movie that's great. I love, but like, you want to see a movie that doesn't go anywhere. Get some context, lady.
Yeah.
There are plenty of movies that I could tell you don't go anywhere. in a very literal sense. But yeah, that's absolutely silly. I'm actually going to ask you a question about the suspense. But before I do, I want to take a quick interruption to remind listeners or viewers about our Patreon. It is the one place where you can find all of our episodes, the video and the audio, as well as extras that you will not find anywhere else, like our upcoming audio track for Soderbergh's The Good German, which, by the way, really quickly, Keir, you know this because I shared it with you. In a surprise, shocking move, Warner Brothers is releasing The Good German on 4K. So everyone be on the lookout for that. I cannot believe, I don't know who was like, you know what needs the 4K treatment? The Good German. Bless that person. Because, I mean, this is a movie that was never out on Blu-ray.
Right.
Maybe that's why it's getting 4K. I don't know.
And the DVDs we both acquired faulty DVDs.
Yeah, basically melted.
Yeah. They set fire to the DVD player. Yeah, that didn't go well. Yeah, I agree. It's a stunning move. I can't imagine there's any outcry. I'd like to think that maybe we, the loyal fans of our podcast maybe drive a little bit of demand for The Good German. I'm sure it's pretty small. We're still growing. But whatever the reason, very excited by this news.
I'm very excited as well. It's pretty amazing. I'm going to be day of getting that for sure. But getting back to the Patreon, like I said, we're going to record our own commentary track that will be discussing a lot of interesting things about the movie. It's a movie that we both love. I especially, it was became one of my favorite Soderberghs. So you'll find that on our Patreon. And best of all, with the Patreon, it is free to join. Okay, you can join for free, totally fine. And you can find that at patreon.com/The Filmographers Podcast.
If you want to join at a paid level, there are, of course, options for that. And you'll get great rewards as well, like a Filmographer sticker or a Filmographer's coffee mug. Again, that's patreon.com/The Filmographers Podcast.
And if Patreon's not your thing, like we said, absolutely fine. You can always still be part of our community by, leaving us a review, leaving us a rating, leaving us a comment on our YouTube page. There's plenty of places and opportunities for you to engage with us, and we always respond. So we're eager to hear from you and to keep the Soder conversation going. And speaking of keeping the conversation going, let's get back to Black Bag. Keir, what I want to ask you, it is a spy thriller. Did you find it to be suspenseful?
Yeah, I really did. There again, I can't go into some of the details I would love to share because we're trying to avoid spoilers, but it definitely took some turns that I was not expecting. And I think one of the things that helps too is just the pacing was terrific. Again, it's a short movie. There are these, there's a prolonged dinner conversation to start the movie, which some viewers might think, oh, that's going to be a little boring. It is not. It is an incredibly eventful dinner party, as is the dinner party that concludes the movie. So even in some longer, drawn out, more dialogue heavy scenes like that, it really rolls right along. And also there's just excellent conflict and all these questions being raised. It's a spy thriller, arguably, but it's also it's a mystery because we've got this, as you say, we've got the suspects and we've got clues, and our man Fassbender is kind of serving as the sleuth, sort of knocking them down one by one. But it also deserves the spy thriller kind of moniker because it's also about geopolitical stuff, and it's also about ethics, and it's about what government agencies do when they're not when provided proper oversight by lawmakers. There's so much packed into this short running time. But yeah, I did feel like it was suspenseful. And there's a big twist partway through that sends the investigation in a totally different direction.
A very satisfying direction, I would say.
Very satisfying direction. But there's also just I'm thinking of there's a great scene where Fassbender's character is trying to observe something via a satellite, and he has to get access to that satellite through not, the typical channels. And it's just that's a wonderfully suspenseful, probably 3-minute scene that just had me clenching because it's handled so well. So yes, I think it was very suspenseful.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I was thinking of that scene exactly. That's a really, really good suspenseful scene. I think it's really good at laying out the clues, enough MacGuffins, a little bit of misdirection. It has that little bit, as we talked about with Kep and Kimmy, it has sort of a Hitchcockian flair. Hitchcock used to make spy thrillers. He actually made some later with Torn Curtain as well, later in his career, but he cut his teeth often on some spy thrillers, and has a little bit of that Hitchcock. I think Hitchcockian spy thriller, probably a little bit more than a John Le Carre, but a little bit of that as well. So there's just, it's playing with that genre, and it's playing it with like really fun ways, and it has some genuine suspense and misdirection, and you don't know how things are going to play out. Your allegiances shift through the movie, like, ooh, I think it's this guy, oh, maybe it's him. And they're all kind of like, they're all red herrings, but they're really good red herrings, because they're convince you of their possibility. The best red herrings convince you that they could be true. In a way, some of the stuff is true. It executes everything really well. It's fun, and again, it's just that 90 minutes. It hits that mark, and I can't admire that enough. Like, it's just so quick and tight, and still manages to be suspenseful, smart, great characters, looks great. I cannot say enough good things about it. Like, I just really, really hope people go and check it out and help make this movie a success, because I want like 10 of these movies. I want like the Michael Fassbender, Kate Blanchett, whatever, like this spy detective duo doing this kind of stuff for a franchise that could be a blast.
Speaking of John Le Carre, I mean, I feel like Woodhouse, the Fassbender's character, I mean, it makes me think a little bit of a Smiley character.
Smiley, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like he's, because it's very much about being a spy with, it's not like the rogue lone wolf out in the field making decisions, shooting bad guys, breaking people's necks. It's very much about the spy in the bureaucracy. And it's also like his portrayal, think of like Alec Guinness or somebody, he plays it very straight. He's portrayed as a little bit of a fuss budget, who's maybe a little bit of a neat neck, like his wife is trying to get him to come to bed, and he's still trying to tidy up after the dinner party, but not in a cliche, prissy way or anything.
No, that's such a great moment though. And I know this, we're both married guys, and she's like, leave it. And he's like, I will, as he's picking it up, as he's like, I will. Yes, honey. Yes.
Yeah.
It's such great little flourishes like that throughout the whole movie.
He plays it with such reserve. I also thought a little bit of maybe a Jeremy Irons or somebody like that. Fassbender is so fascinating. I don't know why he's not he's a star. Not a bigger star, but maybe he isn't a bigger star because he does such a great job of disappearing into his roles.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's tremendous. I've loved him. I think he's just done so much great and varied work. But I guess I'll say this, if you are looking for reasons, I always like to give the comp. So I already said, like, so you have Knives Out, I think, is 1. Le Carre stuff is 2. We talked about this yesterday. Rubicon, the AMC series about like spies who are more or less a think tank, is 3. The sillier end is probably Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like the married couple. I'm thinking of the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. All sort of good comps, also like the Hitchcockian spy thrillers. It's all existing in this really fun, and Agatha Christie, really fun, cool wheelhouse that like you can find a lot to say, I like this thing and I'm gonna like this thing. That is Black Bag. See it on the big screen. Take your friends, tell your friends. I can't recommend it enough. Love this movie.
And I'm just going to add on and say, take your spouse. You mentioned a moment ago, married people, I think, will have an extra special appreciation of this movie. It's so refreshing to me to see a movie that's really focused around a real feeling marriage with two equally great actors, and really centering their marriage in the story in a way that is still sexy. It's not, it's just not tired Hollywood cliche. Like they make monogamy sexy. This is not a great comp, but I think, if you like the Thin Man movies where it's like a great fun marriage, you'll also like this because, this is not as quippy, but there is definitely humor in this. And I just couldn't get enough. So like, I think we talked about how it's a great adult movie, but I think it's a great date movie with a spouse as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think you couldn't have said it better. I think it's nice to be able to go see something as a couple, and yeah, see Black Bag. I don't have anything else to say about it. Just go see it. There's so many things that I know people like that are like that, and it's so well done. So please go see it. Keir, anything else that you've got?
Go see Black Bag. Let's make this one a hit. We need more movies like it.
I agree. So big thumbs up from the balcony. Keir and I. Now, as always, you can find us on Blue Sky. We're on Instagram at the Filmographers, and we're even on TikTok now. Or just send us an old-fashioned email. We're the filmographerspodcast@gmail.com. That is the filmographerspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, please send us an email and tell us what you thought of Black Bag if you've seen it, or comment on any of our channels. Let us know what you think about the movie. You can visit us on Patreon, where you'll find all of our episodes, merch, and more. That's patreon.com, the Filmographers Podcast. Patreon.com, the Filmographers Podcast.
Yeah, and also very exciting. Don't forget to come and see us at one of our three or all of our three live events.
We'll be at all three, so why don't you come to all three? We're going to be introducing Aaron Brockovich at the Classic Cinema's Lake Street Theater in Oak Park on March 19th. And we'll be introducing Traffic at the same location on April 23rd.
We'll also be introducing Out of Sight at the Music Box Theater in Chicago on April 7th. So we hope to see you at any of these events. They're going to be a lot of fun. We'll be there. Maybe we'll have some cool stuff with us. I don't know. Maybe. I'm going to tease it either way.
And thanks, as always, to Kevin Lau, our producer, Gompson, who composed and played our theme music, and Cosmo Graff, who designed our logo and our merch. Join us next time on the Filmographers Podcast as we close our first season with a bang. Maybe not Joe Bang, but a bang nonetheless.